I've always thought road trips were supposed to be peaceful. Windows down, music playing, headlights stretching ahead into the quiet dark. But over the years I've learned that the open road isn't always empty. Sometimes, it watches you back. What I'm about to share are 3 experiences I'll never forget. Strange, terrifying, and still unexplained. If you've ever driven down a deserted highway at night, you might understand. It was late October about 2 years ago. I was driving home from a friend's cabin deep in the woods of northern Oregon. The drive back was long, nearly 6 hours of winding roads, gas stations that closed before midnight, and miles of absolute silence. I remember checking the clock on my dashboard, 1:13 a.m., when I realized I hadn't seen another car in nearly 40 minutes. The highway stretched out ahead like a thin ribbon, cutting through black forest on both sides. My phone had no signal, and the only sound was the hum of my tires against the road. About halfway through that stretch, I noticed something odd, a single orange glow far ahead. It looked like a flickering light, almost like someone waving a lantern. At first, I thought it might be a construction site or a parked vehicle with hazard lights. But as I got closer, the light began to move, side to side, like someone signaling me to stop. I slowed down a little, heart picking up pace. That's when I saw him. There was a man standing on the side of the highway right past a bend. He wore what looked like a faded gray coat, hood pulled low, and he was holding something, a flare maybe, casting that strange orange glow across his face. He waved it again, slowly, like he wanted me to pull over. Every instinct told me not to, but as I drove past him, I glanced in my rearview mirror and froze. He wasn't standing anymore. He was running, right down the middle of the road, waving that burning flare, chasing after my car. I pressed the gas and kept my eyes on the mirror. The light bobbed up and down, getting smaller as I sped away, until finally it vanished. I didn't stop. I didn't even blink until I reached the next rest stop about 20 minutes later. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my water bottle. There were 2 trucks parked near the vending machines, so I felt safe enough to step out. The driver of one, an older guy in a plaid jacket, noticed how tense I looked. He asked if I was okay. I told him what happened, about the man on the highway waving the flare. The trucker's face went pale. "You were on 43, right?" he asked. I nodded. He let out a long breath and said, "You're not the first to see him." Apparently, several drivers over the years had reported a man with a flare on that same stretch of Highway 43. Always at night, always waving for help. The legend went back decades, to a car crash that happened there in 1987. A man had been stranded after his car hit a fallen tree. He tried to wave down passing vehicles with a road flare, but before anyone stopped, another car hit him. They said he died instantly, and that his body was found in the middle of the road, the flare still burning beside him. I didn't believe ghost stories before that night. But when I got back in my car and checked my side mirror one last time, I swear I saw that same orange glow, far behind me in the dark, flickering just once before disappearing again. I'd been driving for nearly 9 hours that night. The interstate stretched endlessly in front of me, dark except for the faint glow of my headlights. When you drive alone long enough, the road starts to feel like a dream, like you're drifting through some quiet dimension made of asphalt and fog. It was mid-December, and I was heading home from visiting family in Nevada. My route cut through a long, desolate stretch of Arizona highway, No towns for 50 miles in either direction. I remember glancing at my fuel gauge around 1:47 a.m. The needle sat just above empty. Perfect. I hadn't seen a single open station in almost an hour. And the GPS on my phone kept flickering between no service and searching for signal. When I finally saw the faint glow of a gas sign ahead, it felt like a miracle. A weathered old board read, "Last stop fuel and service," with half the letters burned out. No cars, no movement, just that flickering fluorescent sign buzzing in the dark. I pulled off the highway and rolled to a stop beside one of the pumps. The station looked ancient. Cracked concrete, faded posters, and weeds growing through the pavement. Every window on the building was either boarded up or shattered. Still, I told myself maybe someone lived nearby and left the lights on. I got out, rubbing my eyes, and reached for the pump handle. Dead. The screen was dark. The card reader slot looked corroded with rust. That's when I noticed something strange. The lights above the pump canopy weren't connected to any power line. At least none I could see. They flickered unevenly, like they were being powered by an old generator somewhere inside. I figured maybe there was a night clerk inside. The store's door was covered in grime, but a faint glow came from within, so I stepped closer and knocked lightly. No answer. I pressed my hand to the glass and it was cold. Colder than it should have been, considering how mild the night air was. After a few seconds, the door creaked open slightly. Just enough to make that dry scraping sound metal doors make when they haven't been used in years. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone working tonight?" Silence. But I could hear something faint, like the buzz of an old radio playing deep inside. Not music exactly, just static, with the occasional garbled voice cutting through it. I hesitated, then pushed the door open a little wider. The smell hit me immediately. Dust, oil, and something faintly metallic like dried blood. The shelves were nearly empty, most products expired or decayed. Old chip bags puffed with air, soda bottles lined with grime. A single bulb flickered above the counter. That's when I saw the register light up. Just for a second. The screen flashed bright green, cash only, and then went black again. I took a step back. The hair on my neck rose. Something about the place didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, like someone had been here recently, but left in a hurry. Behind the counter there was a door slightly ajar, maybe leading to an office or storage room. And that's where the sound was coming from, the radio. I leaned forward and called again, louder this time. "Hey, I just need some gas. I'll pay cash if you're here." The radio crackled, a whisper of static. Then a man's voice, faint but distinct, came through. "Don't come in." The words were so faint I thought I'd imagined them. Then the static cut out completely. I stood frozen for what felt like a full minute, waiting for another sound, but nothing came. Finally, I whispered, "Okay," and turned to leave. That's when the door behind me slammed shut. The front door. The one I came through. I spun around and it was closed tight. I hadn't touched it. The flickering light above me dimmed until the whole room was barely visible. Only the glow from that back door, the office, remained. Something shifted in the dark behind the counter. I couldn't see it clearly, just movement, slow and deliberate, like someone crouching or crawling. Then I heard it. The squeak of a shoe against tile and a faint inhale. Someone was definitely in there with me. I whispered, "Look, I didn't mean to bother you," trying to sound calm. "I just needed gas. I'll go." No reply. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on that doorway. The light from inside flickered again. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure. Not standing, bent almost folded in half like someone trying to hide under a desk but moving toward me. That was enough. I ran to the front door, yanked the handle. It didn't budge. I slammed my shoulder into it twice until the rusted frame gave way and the door burst open. The cold air outside hit me like a slap. I sprinted to my car, jumped in and locked the doors. As I turned the key, my headlights swept across the station, and that's when I saw it. Face pressed against the inside of the glass door I'd just broken out of. Pale, wide-eyed, smiling, the kind of smile that doesn't belong to anyone sane. I floored it out of there, gravel spraying behind me. When I finally merged back onto the highway, I didn't look back for at least 10 minutes. When I finally did glance into my mirror, there were no lights, no sign, no gas station. Just an endless stretch of dark road behind me. For the first half hour after I got back on the highway, my hands were shaking so bad, I could barely keep the wheel straight. I told myself it was exhaustion. I told myself the mind does weird things when you're sleep-deprived and driving alone. But somewhere around mile marker 146, I noticed something that made me realize I hadn't imagined it. My tank was still on empty. I'd been driving for 30 solid minutes and the gauge hadn't moved, which meant that whatever I'd seen, whoever that was, had kept me in that place long enough for the needle to drop below E. The road was dead silent. No headlights ahead or behind me, just the sound of the tires humming over the cracked asphalt. Then the radio came on by itself. Not the station I'd been listening to earlier. Just static. The same low, fuzzy static I'd heard inside the store. I slammed the power button. Nothing. The volume knob twisted by itself a fraction of a turn. That was when I swerved onto the shoulder, killed the engine, and sat there breathing in short, hard bursts. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. When I finally worked up the nerve to restart the car, the radio was dead again. No static, no power. I drove until dawn before stopping at a diner outside Flagstaff. The waitress asked if I was okay because I looked, in her words, like I'd seen a ghost. I just nodded and ordered coffee. While I was stirring in the cream, an older man at the counter looked over at me. He'd overheard me asking the waitress about the nearest gas station heading east. "You didn't stop at last stop, did you?" he asked. I froze. "Yeah," I said slowly. "About 3 hours back?" The man frowned. "Son, that place burned down almost 20 years ago." I laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but he didn't smile. He reached into his wallet, pulled out an old folded clipping, and slid it across the counter. The headline was yellowed but readable. "Local gas station owner and 2 customers found dead in overnight fire. December 2003. The picture beneath it was unmistakable. Same cracked sign, same boarded windows, even the same faded Coca-Cola poster on the wall. According to the article, the fire had started around 2:15 a.m. Investigators believed it was electrical, something to do with faulty wiring in the store's back office. They said the owner was found behind the counter, the customers near the door, as if trying to escape. I must have gone completely pale because the waitress put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, honey?" I just stared at the paper and whispered, "There were lights." "The pumps were on." The old man shook his head. "Power lines got cut when they widened the highway. Ain't been electricity out there since before that fire." For the rest of that morning, I sat in my car in the diner's parking lot, replaying the entire night. The cold door handle, the voice through the radio, the face pressed against the glass. Part of me wanted to go back just to prove it existed, to see daylight on the place, to convince myself it was just an old ruin that my tired mind had filled with shadows. But I couldn't make myself turn the car around. Instead, I drove home. That night, when I unpacked my bag, I found something wedged in the passenger side footwell. A scrap of paper curled and brittle from heat. The corner of an old gas receipt, no station name, just a timestamp. 2:13 a.m. And at the bottom, printed faintly in blue ink, were the words, "Thank you for visiting Last Stop Fuel and Service." For months afterward, I tried to forget it. But every now and then, when I drive late at night and the fuel light comes on, I swear I can still hear that faint hiss of static creeping through the radio. Sometimes a man's voice slips through it, soft enough that I can't be sure it's real. Don't come in. I travel a lot for work. Mostly small towns, long drives, cheap motels. Nothing fancy, just a bed, a bathroom, and a lock that hopefully works. This happened about a year ago, but I still remember it every time I pass a motel sign on a lonely road. It was around midnight, and I was driving through a stretch of highway between two towns in the Midwest. My GPS showed nothing but black for miles. The gas gauge was low, and I was too tired to make it to the next city. That's when I saw it. A flickering neon sign by the road. It said, "Rosewood Motel, vacancy." The place looked dead. A single building with about 10 rooms, all in a straight line. Half the lights were off, the paint was peeling, and the sign made that buzzing sound old neon signs make before they die completely. But I didn't have a choice. I parked in front of the small office. The door creaked open when I pushed it. Inside, a woman sat behind the counter, half asleep, her eyes glued to a static-filled TV. She looked up just enough to say, "Cash only." I handed her a few bills. She gave me a rusty key with a tag that read Room 7, and that was it. I grabbed my bag and walked down the row of rooms, all dark except one. Room 8, right next to mine, had the curtain slightly open and I could see a faint yellow glow coming from inside. I didn't think much of it. I just wanted sleep. At 12:34 a.m., I'd been in bed for maybe 15 minutes when I heard something. Sound from the next room. Room 8. It was a scraping noise, slow, rhythmic, like metal dragging on the floor. I told myself maybe it was plumbing or an old air conditioner. But then came the tapping. 3 slow taps on the wall, right behind the headboard. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. I knocked back, half jokingly, just to see if it would stop. A few seconds later, the same 3 taps came again. I tried to laugh it off, turned up the TV volume, and pulled the blanket over my head. But then I heard something worse, a voice, hoarse, low, and trembling, whispering through the thin motel wall. "Don't open your door tonight." I sat up immediately, heart pounding. I turned off the TV. The only sound now was the buzzing neon outside. "Hello?" I called out softly through the wall. No response. I pressed my ear against the wallpaper. I could hear faint breathing. Slow, wheezing breaths. Then, after a few seconds, footsteps, shuffling, crossing the room, and then silence. At 1:10 a.m., I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought about that voice. That warning. I checked outside through the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for my car and an old pickup truck, probably belonging to the person next door. Then I noticed something strange. Room 8's curtain had moved. It was wide open now. The light inside was still dim, but I could see part of the bed. and someone sitting on it. A man. Looked maybe in his 70s. He was sitting perfectly still, facing the wall. His posture was so stiff it didn't look natural. I stared for maybe 20 seconds before the lights in his room suddenly went out. I jumped back from the window. At 2:47 a.m., the scraping noise started again. Louder this time. Something was being dragged, not inside his room, but outside, across the concrete walkway. I peeked through the blinds again, under the dim glow of the flickering neon light. I saw him, the old man from room 8. He was dragging a large black trash bag across the ground. His movements were stiff, slow, and jerky, like his joints didn't work right. He stopped right in front of my door. I held my breath. He just stood there for what felt like forever. Then I heard that same hoarse whisper, only this time clear and right outside my door. "It's not safe here." I didn't move, didn't even blink. He slowly dragged the bag away, disappearing into the dark. I should have left right then, but I couldn't move. My brain was frozen. At 5:15 a.m., the sound of a police siren jolted me awake. I got up and looked outside. 2 police cars were parked outside the motel office. The woman from the front desk was talking to one of the officers, pointing toward room 8. I stepped out cautiously. When I got closer, I saw the door to room 8 was wide open. Inside, the bed was untouched. The light bulb was swinging slightly, casting shadows around the empty room. The officer noticed me and asked if I'd seen anyone. I told him about the old man, the tapping, the whisper. He looked at me strangely. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Sir, there hasn't been anyone checked into room 8 for over a week." I stood there frozen as they searched the room. Nothing. No luggage. No personal items. Just a faint dark stain on the floor near the wall we shared. The woman from the office swore she hadn't seen anyone since last Tuesday. An old man traveling alone who paid for one night and never came back. They said he was found dead on the highway a few miles from here. Heart attack. That was 6 days ago. At 6 a.m., when I went to return my key and leave, I saw something that made me nearly drop it. Right beside my door was a small puddle, black, sticky, and smelling faintly of something metallic. And next to it, a piece of torn plastic. The same kind that looked like it came from a trash bag. I didn't say a word. I just got in my car and drove until the motel was a distant blur in my mirror. Even now, I sometimes hear that whisper in my sleep. "Don't open your door tonight." And when I stay in motels, I never take room 7 again.